them I would follow up with the recording. Everyone will receive a copy of this webinar and a follow-up email with a link to a feedback form. So I do ask you to consider providing feedback so we can continue to strengthen our wellness webinars. So November is Diabetes Awareness Month, and the theme is Let's Make Time to Learn More. So I thought it was really appropriate to host a webinar on diabetes, particularly because the rates of diabetes are continuing to climb. Every 3 minutes, someone in Canada is diagnosed with diabetes. In Nova Scotia, 18% of our population is living with diabetes, and this climbs to 34% when we take into account those who have pre-diabetes. We also know that diabetes contributes to strokes, blindness, heart attacks, kidney failure, and non-traumatic leg and foot amputations. So living with diabetes can feel like a full-time job, but many people don't understand the challenges that come with managing this complex, often invisible condition. And we want to change that. And I say about invisible, I have a friend recently, a few months ago, shared with me that she had a diabetes diagnosis, but she's chosen not to share this with family and friends. And she's definitely in the, I'm going to deny that I have it and not get treatment. So again, that makes it complex if you're not seeing the impacts of some of those lifestyle choices. So I'm so pleased to introduce you to our speaker today. She is a diabetes nurse educator with Nova Scotia Health Authority. Carrie graduated from the VG School of Nursing in '91, and 10 years later, she graduated from the Dalhousie Bachelor of Science in Nursing program. She's been working as a diabetes educator since 22, sorry, just letting people in from the lobby, since 2022 when she started in the local diabetes center in Halifax. Her passion for diabetes comes from letting people know that there is a possibility that you can live a long, healthy life while living with controlled diabetes. That's really important. And for fun, Carrie enjoys running, playing the trumpet, and spending time with her family. So I will pass it over to Carrie.
Thank you. So what I'm going to talk about is how to prevent type 2 diabetes. Just because I'm not sure if you're aware, pre-diabetes actually isn't a diagnosis. It's a place where your blood sugars just are not at the target that your blood sugars are supposed to be. So it's sort of that in-between time of a blood sugar without diabetes and diabetes. So it's actually not a disease itself. But I do find it easier just to talk about what is diabetes, and then it helps you understand what is pre-diabetes. So that's the topics for today. What is diabetes? Risk for developing type 2 diabetes. What happens in the body? Diabetes prevention, healthy eating, physical activity, goal setting, and resources in your community that can help you both hopefully try to avoid developing diabetes, and if you do develop diabetes, to manage it well. So what is diabetes? So this is a bit of an odd screen, but just to kind of walk you around the screen. So you have, it starts over with the person with the green circle eating the apple. So when we eat food, food that contains carbohydrate, that food goes to our stomach, gets digested. Food that has carbohydrates in it, that carbohydrate gets broken down to glucose or sugar. So the G's are glucose. Then that glucose gets absorbed into our bloodstream. When glucose is in our bloodstream, it stimulates our pancreas, so the yellow fish-shaped gland up on the top there. It stimulates our pancreas to secrete the hormone insulin. Then when insulin comes into your bloodstream, insulin is like a key to our cells and our organs and our muscles to get the glucose or sugar out of our bloodstream and used by our body, so our organs and our muscles, and it gets used up as energy. What doesn't get used as energy gets stored in our liver for later on when we need a little burst of sugar for fuel. So with diabetes, what happens is, so you go back to the person eating the apple, you eat your food, the food gets digested in your stomach, the carbohydrates get broken down into glucose or sugar, the glucose comes into your bloodstream, but you'll notice if you look over at the pancreas, that yellow fish-shaped gland that secretes the hormone insulin, the insulin comes out into your bloodstream, but you're noticing there's not much insulin. And so then what happens when there's not much insulin present, there's not enough insulin to get the glucose out of the bloodstream and used by your muscles and organs. Or it might be that your body can't use that glucose well. So there's no energy because now there's no glucose in your body to be used for fuel. And then what happens when our glucose, our blood sugar gets up to a certain level, our kidneys actually start to they're trying to get that sugar out of your bloodstream. And so it'll start to stress out your kidneys as it tries to get rid of sugar, but then it also secretes protein. So there are different types of diabetes. There's many more different types even than what I'm going to talk about today. But if we go back to that slide, just so you can see, type 1 diabetes, the cells in your pancreas that actually make insulin are called beta cells. And with type 1 diabetes, these beta cells just stop producing insulin. So that's the problem with type 1 diabetes. They have no insulin production. So most medications aren't going to help them. Most of the pills, the injectables that you hear about now, like Ozempic, they're not going to help people with type 1 diabetes because what their body needs is insulin to get that blood glucose used and out of their bloodstream. Type 2 diabetes could be one of two things. Maybe the body is not able to make enough insulin, so the pancreas isn't making enough insulin, or the pancreas is actually making a lot of insulin, but the body can't use it, and that's called insulin resistance. Type 2 diabetes can be sort of a slower onset, silent in this sense that some people have no symptoms at all. All of a sudden, they're just not feeling well, or they've lost a lot of weight, or they're going to the washroom frequently or drinking large amounts of water. And then there's prediabetes. So prediabetes is meaning that your blood sugars aren't at the target that they should be. So a blood sugar without any diabetes would be 3.6 to 6.0. This would be a fasting blood sugar. Prediabetes is a blood sugar of 6.1 to 6.9. Type 2 diabetes is a blood sugar 7 or greater. So you can see that fine line between no diabetes, 6.0, diabetes is 7.0. Prediabetes is really like that middle state of 6.1 to 6.9 fasting. You can also find it 2 hours after eating a meal if your blood sugars go up between 7.8 to 11.1. So not diabetes yet, no diabetes diagnosis, but this is a pre-diabetes warning. And it says after a 75-gram drink, and just to give you an idea of what a 75-gram drink would be, if you think of that as food, that would be a sandwich with a glass of milk and a piece of fruit and maybe a yogurt is the equivalent of that 75-gram of carbohydrate drink. A1C, so that might be a new term to you. A1C is sugar that sticks to the red blood cells in our bloodstream. And those red blood cells live with us for about 90 to 120 days. So whether you have diabetes or not, sugar naturally sticks to our red blood cells. The problem is when there is more sugar in your bloodstream, there's more sugar to stick to the red blood cells, and it causes that hemoglobin A1C number to go up. So prediabetes and A1C would be about 6 to 6.4. Who's at risk for developing type 2 diabetes? Because these are things that can actually kind of land you in the pre-diabetes range. Being over the age of 40, being overweight, especially extra weight around the center of your body, family history, if you have a mom, dad, brother, or sister with type 2 diabetes, schizophrenia, and schizophrenia more in the sense of the medications that are used to treat schizophrenia can put you at risk of developing diabetes. Polycystic ovary syndrome, and that is because there's insulin resistance created when people have polycystic ovary syndrome, and that insulin resistance stops your body from using the insulin that you're producing well. People who have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, they're at a greater risk of developing type 2 diabetes more because it affects the blood vessels. And diabetes, especially when those red blood cells get coated with sugar, they're flowing through our blood vessels. And then, like I mentioned earlier, that abdominal obesity, that weight around the center of your body. Other things that put you at a risk are members of a high-risk population, Aboriginal, Hispanic, South Asian, Asian, and African descent are all at a greater risk of developing type 2 diabetes. And history of gestational diabetes or diabetes while you were pregnant, especially if your baby was 9 pounds or bigger, that was a lot of stress put on your pancreas and your body, and it created some insulin resistance with that baby being 9 pounds. So how do you know if you actually have diabetes? So there are 3 tests that are used to diagnose diabetes. The number 1 test is a fasting blood glucose. So remember earlier I said no diabetes is 3.6 to 6.0. Pre-diabetes would be if your blood sugar comes in between 6.1 and 6.9. And to actually be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, we like 2 tests. So a blood sugar greater than or equal to 7, but we can also use a hemoglobin A1C for that. So another way to test could be a glucose tolerance test. So that's 75 grams of drink, which is usually like an orange concentrated sugar drink. And that's the equivalent to about most people's supper or even a bigger lunch meal. And then you wait 2 hours to see what happened to the blood glucose after that. So pre-diabetes, if you're between 7.8 and 11, 2 hours after the drink, and diabetes if you're greater than 11, 2 hours after the drink. Would be 11.1 technically. And then the third thing that you can do is check that hemoglobin A1C. So pre-diabetes is 6 to 6.4. Diabetes is 6.5 or greater. One of the things with this test is you can't test it monthly. So remember, if you remember back in the beginning, I told you that the red blood cells in our bloodstream live for 90 to 120 days, so 2 to 3 months. Every day, some red blood cells die off and are replaced with brand new ones. But if you checked at 1 month, you still have 75% of your old red blood cells, 25% new. At a month and a half, you're 50-50. But then at 3 months, you have pretty much all brand new red blood cells. So if you checked an A1C sort of monthly, it's not like it's spread out across the continuum where all the red blood cells coated in sugar up here and the new ones are down here. It's evenly spread throughout our bloodstream. So if they drew the blood work to check an A1C and it's under the 3-month time, there still could be a lot of the red blood cells coated in the sugar from when you were possibly first diagnosed or not yet diagnosed. So that's why this one we like to wait 3 months to test it, so that from the moment you make changes, in 3 months you can see, did the results work? Targets, if you are diagnosed with diabetes, the goal before meals is to be between 4 and 7. And the goal 2 hours after meal is to be between 5 and 10. If you don't need any medications that could put you at risk of a low blood sugar, then we'll say even 5 to 8 is better. The reason that it's 4 to 7 and now not back to that, no diabetes, 3.6 to 6.0, is because a lot of people need medications to help them manage their diabetes. And a lot of diabetes medications put you at the risk of a low blood sugar. So through many years of research, they have learned if you can keep your blood sugars before you eat between 4 and 7, and between 5 and 10, 2 hours after you eat, you are less likely to develop the complications of diabetes. So then where are you on the scale? So no diabetes, your blood sugar is less than 6. Pre-diabetes is 6.1 to 6.9. And then diabetes is 7 greater than 2, blood sugars 7.0 or greater. So it's important to ask those numbers when you meet with your healthcare provider or you have blood work done. Actually ask for, what was my blood sugar? Now, once you develop diabetes and you have those 2 fasting blood sugars greater than 7, you have diabetes. We now know that people can put diabetes into remission so that it does go away. But the minute that those lifestyle changes that you made to get your blood sugars or to get rid of diabetes or put it in remission, the minute any of those lifestyle changes disappear, and your blood sugars go up, you're right back to diabetes. So they've chosen the word remission because we seem to be able to understand in the world remission because we're so used to a cancer diagnosis. So remission is a good word for us to understand. So when we look at that scale, just so that you know, Melanie talked about the statistics in Canada and even Nova Scotia. We are now at 5 million people living with diabetes. When I first started in diabetes in 2002 as a diabetes educator, our number in Canada at that time was 2 million people. So in 22 years, it has more than doubled. So it really is an epidemic. So symptoms of diabetes, how do you know that something's wrong? So these are the most, if people are going to have symptoms, these are the most common symptoms. So going to the washroom more frequently, drinking more often, feeling thirsty, feeling tired, numbness and tingling in your hands and feet, double vision, um, and also like headaches or irritability. But remember, lots of people don't really have these symptoms, or they might not think that these symptoms are a sign of a blood sugar that's not at a normal level, because you can also maybe start to feel this way as you get older, or if your job is stressful or you're, tired and worn out, these symptoms can get messed in with other things. So often that's why people can go undiagnosed for a while. So how do you prevent diabetes? Um, so 3 key things is eating healthy, exercise, and sometimes you just need medication to help get those blood sugars under control or even prevent diabetes from happening. Might be right now on the market, as I'm sure you've heard, there's lots of different weight loss medications, Contrave, Ozempic, Wegovy. Even people will take metformin in the pre-diabetes state to try and help prevent diabetes, because metformin helps reduce your insulin resistance. So sometimes these medications are offered to help you help prevent going on to develop type 2 diabetes. So what is healthy eating? So first of all, think of your plate. This is something that we teach often. You don't have to go out and get a scale. You don't have to buy different foods or special foods. It's just really looking at the portion of what's on your plate. So if you took a regular 7-inch or 9-inch plate, keeping the food in the center of your plate, not going right out to the sides. And we recommend half your plate to be vegetables. Fruit and vegetables you can put in there without diabetes. So we say half your plate fruit and vegetables, a quarter of your plate your protein, and then a quarter of your plate your starch. So like your rice, your pasta, your potatoes, the things that are more likely to raise a blood sugar. So that's when your hands become really great tools. And if you have bigger hands, you're a little bit lucky. So your half of that plate that is your vegetables, that's 2 fistfuls. Your meat, whatever you choose, is the palm of your hand or the deck of a pack of a deck of cards. And then your starch, so your potatoes, your rice, your pasta, would be one of your fistfuls. And then you can always top that up with, fruit or milk. Just remember though, when you're looking at your plate, I often like to give the example of a china plate. So, like a Royal Albert china plate with a pattern. Those plates were designed so that the pattern wasn't covered up. So when you turkey dinner, because people tend to use those plates for fancy meals, when you put your turkey dinner on your plate, you're also supposed to enjoy the pattern around the edge of the plate and not let your food spill over the plate. So try to keep your food to the center of the plate as well. This is just a label so that you know what you're looking at. Because a lot of people, when they look at a label and we say, look at the label, look for sugar. There's a little bit of a trick in this label. So if you start at the top of the label with nutrition facts, whatever this is, it says the serving size is 1 tray. So then if you come down and you go, there's calories, fat, cholesterol, sodium, carbohydrate. I want you to stop at carbohydrate. Carbohydrate actually means in this product, the carbohydrates are what turn to sugar in your bloodstream. A lot of people skip that carbohydrate and just go down to the sugar. and think, oh, there's 27 grams of sugar in this product. But actually what that means is to this product, there are 27 teaspoons of table sugar in this product. But what else is in this product is, I don't know what it might be. It might be cookies. There's 35 grams of carbohydrate because maybe the flour didn't get put in there. So in this product of carbohydrate is 35 grams that turns to sugar. We say subtract the fiber because fiber doesn't turn to sugar in our bloodstream. It passes through into our bowels and we excrete it out. So you can subtract that. So 35 minus 3 is 32. So then when you look at this product, there's now 32 grams of carbohydrate in whatever this product is. So just to put this into perspective for you, 4 grams of carbohydrate is the equivalent of 1 teaspoon of sugar. So if you took 32 and divided by 4, you're going to come out with 8 teaspoons of sugar. So those little white sugar packets, if you go to Tim Hortons or McDonald's and you get the sugar packets in your coffee, this product, whatever it is, has 8 teaspoons of sugar in this product, because we do 35 minus 3 is 32 divided by 4. So when you look at a label, don't just look at the sugar, look at the carbohydrate as well. So 5% is a little. So when you go then over, you see that daily value, excuse me, and the percentages. The carbohydrate percentage comes out to be 11% of your total intake of carbohydrates for the day. So 5% is a little bit of carbohydrates, 15% is a lot. That's what that side label means. That daily value, just so you know, was also based on a 19-year-old Caucasian male. So maybe not where some of us are today in your life. So you want to keep that into perspective as well, that it's meant kind of for, a teenager. So portion distortion, what does that mean? So here's your plate, here's your pasta. We want to be careful of how much of a portion we're putting on our plate. This is a perfectly healthy meal, but the portion, you can see the bigger portion is probably at least maybe 3 to 4 times the size of the one on the right versus the one on the left. So that's a lot of carbohydrate for your body to have to break down. So ways that you could help this portion so that you still feel full and don't feel deprived. You could add a salad to this pasta as well. So then you have some fiber. Make sure you put some meat in your sauce or legumes or beans. That will help to fill you up as well. You could even have a slice of garlic bread to help you feel fuller so that you're not needing to help yourself feel satisfied with that large portion of pasta. Coffee, and it's not really so much the coffee, it's looking at the size, but it's what's in that coffee, right? If you get a triple in that small cup, that triple is probably 6, teaspoons of sugar and 6 teaspoons of cream versus the size. So you want to think of that. What are you putting in your beverage? And remember that the size is double. Caffeine does affect your blood sugar because it's a stimulant. That's why it wakes us up and keeps us going, but it's not that it's a bad thing. So a bagel today and a bagel 20 years ago, a bagel today has grown quite a bit in size. And that bagel today is about 4 slices of bread. Some of you would never sit down and eat 4 slices of bread, 2 sandwiches, 4 slices of bread for breakfast. Most of you would never do that, but we've gotten used to the portion distortion today, and that's a regular size bagel to us now. So eat half of it. Pizza, just trying to show you different things from, 20 years ago to today, that the sizes have grown. We kind of want more for our money. So moderation is key for everything. So nothing is really off limits. Even if you were to look at Canada's food guide today, we have a diabetes food guide, we have Canada's food guide. In either one of those, you notice that there isn't a section that is cookies, candies, cakes, and ice cream. So when you want to have treats and sweets, It's all about moderation and keeping yourself in check. So how do you make that work for yourself? Do you have something small every day? Do you give yourself something as a treat a couple days a week? It's something that you have to sort out for yourself, but it's not total deprivation, because we have definitely learned over the years in the healthcare system that if you are going to deprive yourself of something, your body is just going to want it and crave it. So you need to find a happy medium and maybe give yourself a little bit, but not the full amount, so that you're not, causing yourself mental self-harm. So prescriptions that can help you to prevent um, diabetes, so healthy eating and activity, reasons why you are doing this. There's lots of reasons why we know that activity works. You feel better when you're just even walking. We say just simply go for a walk. There's endorphins that are secreted into your bloodstream, and those hormones help make you feel better. It's the feel better feeling. That's why people like to do it. You don't have to run. You don't have to join a gym. You can just simply walk. And we don't actually care about the number on the scale. It doesn't matter what you weigh, it's what's around the center of your body. So that's why we encourage you to eat well and exercise to help decrease the weight around the center of your body that increases your chances of insulin resistance. Exercise is great for your heart health, and so is eating well. And when I talked about high blood pressure and cholesterol putting you at risk of developing diabetes. It's because if you look at these blood vessels here, they're a little bit blurry, but you can see a blood vessel that doesn't have high blood pressure or high cholesterol. It's a nice clear tube. Once you start getting high cholesterol, so your LDL, which is the bad cholesterol or the lethal cholesterol, that LDL actually builds up on the inside of our blood vessel wall and makes it narrower. And then that can raise our blood pressure. And even when your blood pressure goes up, it can cause that blood vessel to become a less elastic. So then it gets a little harder to want to pulse. And then you add to that those red blood cells stuck in sugar, with sugar flowing through a blood vessel that's filled with bad cholesterol and narrow, it can actually knock off some of that cholesterol and cause a stroke and those kind of things. And then if you actually have diabetes, we recommend testing your blood sugars, because improving your weight that around the center of your body, exercising, all of that can actually improve your blood pressure, your cholesterol, and your blood sugar. So it kind of has a great benefit for you. So I kind of talked about these, but here is a slide. Why exercise? We know that when you exercise, your muscles in your legs, for instance, when you walk, take sugar right out of your bloodstream and use it for fuel, whether there's insulin present or not. We know that if you're exercising and eating healthy, you are going to shed some of that weight around the center of your body. The resistance exercises are known to help boost your metabolism. So that's going to help with your waistline as well. And it also helps to improve your blood sugar when you start doing that resistance exercise. Exercise helps to improve your heart health. We do say, though, if you plan to do anything more than walking and you haven't done anything in a long time, it is a good idea maybe just to have a conversation with your primary care provider, whether it's a physician or a nurse practitioner or a walk-in clinic, just to make sure that you're not going to harm yourself in any way. Exercise is always good for your heart, though, and there's those feel-good hormones that happen when you exercise. It's the hardest part of exercise is actually getting out the door. Not many people, when they get out the door, want to come back. Once you get off the couch and can get yourself out the door, you're good to keep going. And so this is just some statistics of what I talked about, of what exercise can do for cancer, memory, high blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, diabetes, depression because of those feel-good hormones, muscle strength, and just overall mortality. So the most negative thing of exercise is just trying to get yourself to do it, actually. So what kind is best? We say aerobic exercise. You don't have to run. You don't have to do a marathon. Walking is, a perfect thing to do. Go for a walk. You want to feel your heart rate go up a little bit, but you should be able to still talk to someone if you're walking with a buddy. If you're walking by yourself, just try and talk. If you're getting short of breath, you need to slow down. You're going a little too fast. And then we also say add in some resistance exercises. So do some hand weights a couple times a week. So they recommend 150 minutes a week of moderate exercise. So that's your aerobic exercise. That sounds very, very daunting. So break it down. 5 times a week for 30 minutes, go for a walk. Can't do 30 minutes together. Maybe you could do 15 minutes at lunch, 15 minutes before supper. It's dark now, so before supper instead of after. They're not even saying that you have to do it all together. You can't do 5 times a week. Look at 3 times a week for 60 minutes, maybe every other day. And then those resistance exercises, we say 3 times a week for 15 minutes. So I often say, for some reason, in Nova Scotia, we love to watch the weather and know what's going on outside. So while you're sitting there or listening, start out with some water bottles. They're about a 1 pound weight, soup cans, a 1 pound weight, and lift those and, do it for 15 minutes. Put them over your head, put them out in front of you, do triceps, biceps, just something to get that muscle moving. And we know that exercise can actually reduce the risk of death by 50%. And just a little sidebar for diabetes, doing this exercise recommendation can actually lower your A1C by 1 whole%. There aren't many diabetes medications. There are a few more now, but some diabetes medications can't even lower your A1C by 1%, but activity can. So set yourself some goals. So what are you going to do to help, if you're in that pre-diabetes state or you're just trying to completely prevent diabetes, what can you do? So think of the things that we talked about. We talked about eating healthy. Maybe you pick one meal, and for that one meal, you're going to try to have half your plate vegetables, a quarter of your plate meat, and a quarter of your plate your starch. Maybe start with your supper, or maybe you want to do it with your lunch. You're going to bring a sandwich to lunch with some vegetables on the side, with maybe a yogurt, something that you're, reaching a goal of trying to eat healthy. Maybe you're going to go for a walk. And maybe you're going to do that walk twice a week to start. So you want your SMART goal to be specific. What am I going to do? So let's just take the walking. I'm going to walk 30 minutes twice a week. So it's specific and it's measurable, 30 minutes twice a week. I am going to do this at lunchtime or after work. So then I'm very action orientated. I know when I'm going to do it. Make it realistic. Maybe you know that you can't do a 30-minute walk 5 days a week. So then don't. Make it realistic to what you can do so that you can get your habit started. And then how often are you going to do it? So for my first week, I'm going to try twice a week. So start to think about things that can get in the way of it. I already know that I can't go after supper because it's dark, but maybe I could use half of my lunch to eat and half of my lunch to walk. So you want to have, a backup plan so that you're not sabotaging yourself. And then stop and think when you make your goal, how confident am I that I'm going to be able to do that? If you're less than a 7, you're probably not going to be able to get that goal accomplished. So make it a little more realistic for you, because who wants to fail? You want to be successful at what you do. So what is the change you want to happen? So be more active. What is your specific goal? Walk 3 times a week for 30 minutes. Sometimes I forget what my next slide is, even though it's in front of me. What is your action plan? Walk for 30 minutes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday after supper. What steps will you take to reach your goal? Track it on a calendar. Change into exercise clothes after work. Leave my sneakers at the door. So make it achievable for you so that you're successful. So where can you get some help in the community if you're trying to do this on your own? Because it can be quite overwhelming. So if you live in HRM, there are community health and wellness teams that are there available for you to offer you help. You can actually self-refer yourself to that group. It's on the internet, and you know what? Actually, they offer a lot of programs by Zoom. So you might even be outside of HRM and still able to access some of them. Grocery store dietitians are able to help you to read that label, make healthy choices with your food. You know, it is a little bit more expensive to eat healthy when you first look at it, but if you look at a bag of fries that are $2.77, but then you look at a 5-pound bag of potatoes that is $5.99. Yeah, the bag of potatoes is more expensive, but look how much more you're going to get out of that bag of potatoes versus the bag of fries. So sometimes when you stop and look that way, it's like, oh yeah, that is cheaper. And you don't have to eat fresh vegetables. Frozen vegetables are often flash frozen, so they're at their freshest and their peak. There's nothing wrong with eating frozen vegetables. They're just as healthy and sometimes more available and affordable as a frozen product. Just be careful what you put on them, because then that's what changes them from a healthy product to maybe not such a healthy product. So be careful of what your toppings are. There are diabetes centers all throughout the province of Nova Scotia. I kind of forget that number now, but it might be above the 26 amount. So you can be referred there. They offer education. Some of them do community blitzes. Also on your phone, if you've uploaded the Your Health NS app, there's lots of programs on there that you can access as well for healthy living. There's lots of pharmacy-led programs, so check out your local pharmacy to see, are they offering education on different things? Do they have guest speakers? Those sorts of things. There's community dietitians. Some health plans actually cover community dietitians now. So if you're worried about, you know, like, I need help with what I'm eating, I'm not sure with what I'm looking at, I have to live and cook on a budget, they're a great group of people to meet with to try and help you get that sorted out. We often recommend, like, go to a website. So diabetes.ca is the Diabetes Canada website. In our diabetes centers all across this province, we use the guidelines from this group that they do lots of research on to come up with the best practice guidelines. And that's where all the numbers that you saw, the blood sugar targets for prediabetes, diabetes, impaired fasting glucose, the high blood sugars after you eat, all come from that organization and the work that they're doing. So their website actually has lots of information for just the common man. So you don't have to have a PhD in medicine to be able to decipher this stuff. They do lots of stuff in our down to earth everyday language so that you're able to sort through and find what you want. Some family doctors' offices have family practice nurses, so do the NP offices. So your family practice nurse is a very valuable person to sit with and get some education on how best to manage your health. I would just caution you to be careful about internet searches and blogs, because a lot of those times it can just become people's opinions, and what works for one person might not work for the next, and you might get yourself frustrated because it's that you might not be getting the best information. So that's why I put diabetes.ca there. That's the Canadian Diabetes website that has a lot of information to offer to you. So thank you for listening. I've done a lot of talking. And if you have any questions, I'll get Melanie to watch the chat and I'll try to answer any questions that you might have. I guess I could stop sharing, Melanie, couldn't I?
Yeah, that's good. Or you can keep it up there. It's fine.
Okay.
So let's you can pop it in the chat, or you can come off mute if you have any specific questions for Carrie. If not, she has some backup questions that some of you submitted before today's webinar. This is your opportunity.
Hi there. I just found Francois here. I just found that the food information for me, what you showed us about the label, the 5 to 15%, that was good information for me, and hopefully I can look at that a little bit more precisely, and it'll help me guide myself for sure.
Excellent.
We have a question in the chat. Is it normal for your sugars to be higher in the morning when you wake up, and why?
So it's not that it's normal, but it can happen. If it's above that, 7, then it's called impaired fasting glucose. So sometimes when people are diagnosed with diabetes, it's actually from an impaired fasting glucose. So you always wake up in the morning and it's higher. And what actually happens is overnight while we're sleeping, our body's getting prepared for the day, and actually secretes hormones. So glucagon gets secreted, adrenaline, and those hormones actually raise your blood sugar. So some people wake up and their blood sugars are higher, and some people's bodies can deal with those hormones. So that's not a problem for them. So it's what's happening inside of your body as it gets ready for the day. Growth hormone, cortisol, glucagon, adrenaline, that's what's doing it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Oh, a great question here. Do we need to control the fruit intake to control sugar?
So that depends on if you have diabetes or if you don't have diabetes. When you have diabetes, although fruit is a really great choice, each piece of fruit is about 15 grams of carbohydrate or approximately 3 teaspoons of sugar. But with that fruit, you also get vitamins and minerals and fiber. So it's a very healthy choice. When people have diabetes, we say to have like 3 to 4 fruit choices a day. When you don't have diabetes, you can eat as much fruit as you want because food doesn't cause diabetes. It's over the age of 40, family history, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, large baby, all of those things that I reviewed. So what you eat actually doesn't cause diabetes. It's what's around the center of your body. So then once you're diagnosed with diabetes, you want to be careful because you're aiming for at each meal. If you remember way back in the beginning, I talked about that 75-gram oral glucose tolerance test, which is the equivalent of like a supper meal. So we normally tell people with diabetes, you're aiming anywhere for 30, depending if you're a man or a woman and your size, 30 to 75 grams of carbohydrate at a meal. Usually for breakfast, it's like 30 to 60, lunch is 30 to 60, supper can be 30 to 75. So if you're having 3 pieces of fruit at your lunch and you have diabetes, that's 45 grams of carbohydrate. So there's not much left for a sandwich or a glass of milk or a yogurt. So with diabetes, we want people to limit their fruit in a day, but without diabetes, we say no, it's a great choice. I hope that wasn't too convoluted.
No, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. Is there a way to test your blood sugars without going to your health provider just to see where you are at?
So, sometimes, like I know, for instance, Shoppers for sure, and especially during COVID, was offering free blood glucose testing. They were doing it. If you don't want to go to a lab, it's really hard to buy a meter just to test your blood sugars. It's very costly. The strips are $1 a strip, so that's 100 strips. Then plus the meter, which could be 40 to $80. So sometimes pharmacies will offer blood glucose tests. Diabetes centers, if you have diabetes, they will. I'm just trying to think if there's anyone in the community that would do a blood glucose test that isn't a physician. But some physicians' offices have blood glucose testing meters that they could test. We would never diagnose somebody off a meter though, because they can lose their accuracy. So we would always recommend if that blood sugar was higher on the meter or not to a target, we would then say, you know what, you should go see someone, a walk-in clinic, a family doctor, an NP, get a blood requisition, and go get your blood checked.
Okay, great answer. Thank you so much. Carly has a question here. How accurate do you think new technologies are in measuring blood sugar levels, apps or smartwatches? Maybe they're not measuring blood glucose levels?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are blood glucose testing meters on the market, which actually, when you poke your finger, it's actually pulling out the sugar from the bloodstream. Okay, so that is the most accurate. It's from a capillary. So vein is most, but people aren't going to go around and take blood out of a vein every day. But this sugar out of the capillary is right away how much sugar is right in my bloodstream. The sensors that you see people wear mostly on their arms, so like the Libre sensor, the Dexcom sensor, the Medtronic sensor, what is happening is when that sugar leaves our bloodstream, it goes out into our interstitial fluid. So now there's a 10 to 15 minute delay from the sugar in your bloodstream to the sugar that has gone out into the fatty tissue. So we know there is a delay because it's measuring a different sugar in a different substance. So although it is still accurate, we also do know it is sort of a delayed blood glucose. The delay keeps getting shorter and shorter as technology keeps improving, but it is a delay. So if you were to check your arm and check your finger, chances are they're not going to be the same. It's still accurate. It's just that this one is right now. This one is 5 minutes from right now, if that makes sense. Are you still there, Melanie?
I'm on mute. Sorry. I rarely do that.
Okay.
The next question is, I find it takes longer than 2 hours after eating for my sugars to go down, but they do. Is 2 hours the hard line on the time period, or does it vary with each person?
So 2 hours kind of is the hard line because we know, so the whole point of that 2 hour blood glucose is we know that if you can keep your before meal blood sugars between 4 and 7 and your 2 hour after blood sugars between 5 and 10, you are less likely to develop the complications of type 2 diabetes. The longer that sugar stays in your bloodstream, there is more sugar that is allowed to stick to those red blood cells, which then live with you for like 2 to 3 months, which increases your chances of complications. So even if if it's just going up to 10, that's okay. But if it's going above 10, it's more sugar that stays in your bloodstream and sticks to your red blood cells over the 3 months.
Great. I have a question as well. So I'm always thinking about behavior change. I'm always thinking about these webinars and how information is just information unless we start to apply this. From your perspective, for someone who's struggling with like activity and struggling with healthier eating and hydration and all these things we're supposed to do, is there one area where you would say, this is where to start, this is where you're going to get the bang for your buck so you can build on other lifestyle changes?
Like I would think exercise. Is that what you mean?
Exercise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exercise. If you took a poll, and don't do this, but if we took a poll of everybody on the webinar and said, put up your hand if you exercise 5 times a week for 30 minutes. There's not very many people, and I only know that because I see so many people, in the run of a week. And if I was to ask them, what do you do for exercise? Most people don't. Thankfully,
Mhm.
people do like their normal activities of daily living, like, maybe laundry, cleaning the house, walk the dog. Those things all count. But the problem is when you're trying to make a health change, especially one with exercise and diabetes, where we know that if you walk, your muscles take sugar right out of your bloodstream and use it up for fuel. It has such a huge impact on your heart health, your blood vessel health, your mental health. It's overall helping everything if you're able to do it, of course. I think it's where you're going to see the biggest bang for your buck in your overall management of your health.
Wonderful. I would have assumed it was the eating. So is there so many
No.
misnomers and myths out there
Yep.
around diabetes? So I'm really happy that's the answer. So
Yeah.
we're at 12:50. I'll let you answer a couple of the questions that were submitted to you. But in the meantime, if folks, I put in the chat, I would love to know what is one reasonable and manageable thing you can start doing today to reduce your risk for developing diabetes, or if you have diabetes, to manage it further. So folks can put that in. I'll just type that in there. If you can put your answers in, it just gives me a good sense of the kind of that translating the information to behavior. Okay, Carrie, so if you can address a couple of the questions,
Sure.
that would be
And
wonderful.
sure. And I'll look at questions that maybe weren't addressed in the webinar so that I can get ones that were outside of that.
Sure.
So if you do not have diabetes today, how can you make sure you won't become a person with diabetes tomorrow? So just like we talked about, eat healthy, exercise, get that waste off the center of your body because it increases your insulin resistance. Excuse me, and manage your stress. Stress raises our blood sugar. So, that's why when I say exercise, like going for a walk, we know that walking helps with stress as well. So those are the big things that can lead to diabetes. Healthy snack options for someone with pre-type 2 diabetes, excuse me, go for your less pre-packaged foods. So look at your whole foods, right? When you go to the grocery store, stick to the outside of your grocery store, but somehow hop around the bakery so you're not enticed to buy the pastries. But your outside of your grocery store are your freshest foods. And those are the kind of things, once you get into more prepackaged food, you're going to get higher carbohydrates, higher sugar content, higher fat content. So fruit, vegetables, the way to make a snack last is add a protein to it. So, if you need a mid-afternoon snack, have a Greek yogurt and put a quarter cup of blueberries or cut up strawberries. They can be fresh or frozen. Put some of that in it so that you get your protein with your Greek yogurt and then your carbohydrate from your fruit to give you some energy. Signs of diabetes to look for in children, it's the same as adults. Thirsty, going to the washroom frequently, tired, irritable, itchy skin. Those are the big signs in adults and children of diabetes. When should you start to screen? It's age 40. Tips on intermittent fasting. So you have to do what works for you and what's actually going to be sustainable. But remember, when you do fast, your body needs food for energy. So when you're fasting, your body can't get that energy from food, so then it will actually break down your fat. So this is what a keto diet is, right? So when you eliminate, it's usually carbohydrates are eliminated and a higher protein, and hopefully a higher lean protein choice, not just any protein. But what happens is then your body is hungry, so it actually starts to eat yourself to stay alive. So it actually digests the fat, breaks down the fat. Those fats turn into carbohydrates, so sugar for fuel, and then ketones. And then it's those ketones, by keeping yourself in a ketotic state and those ketones there, that's what helps to keep the weight off. But if you choose to live that life, you have to do it 24/7, because we now know our obesity is now a disease. It's a chronic illness. It's not just a lazy person or a person who eats garbage or anything else that people have used to say against people. Obesity is a chronic disease, and our fat cells have a memory. And so if you starve yourself to lose weight or to maintain blood sugars, the minute you slip or go back to the way that you lived, those fat cells remember, like, oh, I was deprived once. I need to hoard all this in and keep this on and gain this weight. So then people gain back double the weight. And that's why our fat cells have a memory of the biggest weight that we ever were. So you want to be really careful with that. Sometimes when people talk to me about intermittent fasting, I will say, think of intermittent fasting on a really easy level. Why don't you stop eating at 6 o'clock at night or whenever your supper ends, and then don't eat again until 6 o'clock in the morning? That is an intermittent fast. For 12 hours, you didn't eat. So you can kind of think of it that way. The only thing that I would say about like any of these sort of fad diets is that's why we don't use the word diet. It has to be a lifestyle change, because diet in our brain has come to our brain to be temporary. So you have to make a lifestyle change that is long term. It's a long answer to that question, sorry. And then the only other question that was answered that I would think is really important, someone asked how diabetes affects health and what diabetes affects on health and mental health. Diabetes comes with a stigma, and if any of you out there are living with diabetes, you know that. Everybody assumes that you caused diabetes yourself. We can't pick our parents, we can't pick our siblings. Genetics is the number one reason that people end up with type 2 diabetes. Then you can do stuff to try and help yourself. But it's not, you didn't cause the diabetes yourself. And that's something really important that you have to think of. And that's the big stigma with diabetes, is people judge you. And that's not fair, because you didn't cause it. You didn't overeat and cause yourself to have diabetes. You didn't destroy the cells in your pancreas that make insulin and cause yourself to have diabetes. So I think the stigma is very harmful to people. I think that's most of the
Absolutely.
questions.
Okay, that was absolutely wonderful. I thank everyone who attended for putting in some of those things that you're going to, those manageable, reasonable things that you can start doing today. And I just want to thank you, Carrie. That was such a informative presentation, such an engaging presentation. And I can tell your work makes a significant difference. And we appreciate the effort you put into educating your clients and taking the time today to put together a presentation and educating our municipal employees all across Nova Scotia. So really pleased. Yeah, so thank you so much. And I appreciate everyone for attending, and we will do this. Yeah, we will do this again next year. I learned a lot of things. I'm a healthcare professional, and I learned a few things that I didn't know. So
Excellent.
I did not know that your blood glucose raises under stress. I do mostly mental health, so I'm curious of how I can start kind of weaving this into some of the mental health work that I do as well. And I did not know that exercise, and we're really promoting movement at work. So I didn't realize that would be your kind of your first suggestion of getting that bang for the buck. And I didn't know those plates, those beautiful plates, so you wouldn't hide your food. So I'm going to try to keep that in mind over the
Yeah,
holiday season, see how well I do.
exactly.
Okay, thank you, everyone. If you have any questions or concerns, reach out to me. I will follow up with an email with the recorded version, maybe the slides if Carrie's able to share them. Sometimes we're not able to share them for proprietary reasons, and a link to a feedback form. So we thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you.
Have a great
Enjoy
day,
your lunch.
Carrie. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.